Hey everybody, welcome back to Lincoln Journal Stars 4 Downs. Luke Mullin and Amie Just coming to you on a rainy day here in Lincoln, but a lot to get done around the Nebraska football facility. 2 games left in the season. Of course, 4-game losing streak that the Huskers are looking to snap with Wisconsin coming to town this week. But as we get into that, first we have to recap what happened last week on the road at USC. Today, Matt Rhule reacting to that notorious no call at the end of the game, Jamal Banks. Pretty hard to see in real time, I will say, depending on the vantage point. But look at the replay.
On the field, standing behind a tall person, yeah, I didn't see it.
Yeah, but you look at the replay. People are going crazy on social media. Can't say I blame them. Pretty egregious no call. But Matt Rhule said, I don't know what to say at this point.
Yeah, even our Lyft driver leaving the stadium, who said he was a USC grad, said Nebraska got robbed on that. So it's pretty obvious to most people. But yeah, Matt Rhule doesn't know what to say anymore. He said earlier this season he's tired of apologies. It sounds like they have continued. But there's nothing you can do. You can be mad, but it's not going to change anything. But it's still really frustrating.
Yeah, and when you look at that USC game, you know, certainly that one play, it's at the end, it's magnified. But Matt Rhule saying, yes, they left a lot out there out on the field. There were a lot of missed opportunities for Nebraska, just got one play away. And that's something that they're still looking to fix. It hurt them against USC last week.
Yeah, they were not just like offensively, but everywhere, right? Like USC had like 2 like very weird, bizarre, strange catches. One for a touchdown where it's off Tommy's hands and off the receiver's chest, then off Tommy's helmet. Or no, that's Malcolm Hartsock. Sorry, there's so many of them. I'm just like forgetting who's involved, right? But yeah, very strange. And USC was the benefactor of both of those weird catches. Now, Matt Rhule said they're not snake bitten, they're not cursed, they're not unlucky. They just need to execute. But yeah, sometimes it certainly feels that way.
Yeah, one thing after the other. Always, you never know. You never know what's going to happen in these Nebraska games, as you all well know. But as we look at this USC game, everybody was interested to see Dana Holgorsen. How does the offense look? Is it different, in strategy and personnel? Well, players after the game talked about the simplified game plan. They liked it. But Matt Rhule today, he said, there's no new plays. It's all the stuff that they've implemented. And yes, there's some stuff with the language that Holgorsen is having to deal with, that whole process of going through game planning throughout the week. But by and large, for that Nebraska offense, it was not an entirely new situation for them to deal with. And it was still kind of some of the same things. They were picking up those, bits and pieces, but it wasn't like drive after drive. They were marching down the field, and they really didn't have the explosive play.
Yeah, and then one thing that looked a little different to us on the surface that wasn't necessarily a product of Holgorsen, but rather a product of availability. Obviously, you don't have Ramir, and then Dante got rolled up on in practice or stepped on or something like that. So yeah, Emmett got a lot more touches, but there were some things behind the scenes that factored into that too. And so, but yeah, not a whole lot of explosive plays, though they did try. They dialed up a go ball on the first play of the game. Didn't happen. And then there were some other bigger plays that, 2-minute type situation with, there at the end on the sideline. But yeah, they need a little bit more there.
Well, it was a focus to get the ball out quickly. That was something that Rhule said Holgorsen had identified, and I do think Dylan Rhule, he did pretty well at that. He was good throwing the ball between the numbers over the middle of the field, but it still does beg that question. Early in the year, you look at some of those games, they're going down the sideline, 40-yard passes, back shoulder fades, like trust those guys to go up and get it. We've just not seen that from the offense recently.
Yeah, and some of that can be attributed to, they're not playing UTEP anymore, right? They're not playing Northern Iowa. They're playing better defenses and better teams with bigger, bigger secondary. So that's some of it, but you still have to give them the opportunity. But when you give them the opportunity, are they executing? It's a big question.
Yeah, and they'll see one of those said secondaries this week. Wisconsin coming to town, and their most recent result, it raised some eyebrows. Top-ranked Oregon, a team who's scored about 30 points consistently every week in Big Ten play. Guess what? Only 16 points in that win over Wisconsin, and had to come back late to beat those Badgers. But when you look at what happened to Wisconsin, why they lost that game, it's because their offense continues to struggle in a big way, and it cost offensive coordinator Phil Longo his job this week. Wisconsin parted ways with him. 2 games left to play, so again, you don't expect to reinvent that whole Badger offense in these next couple days, but still that is an unknown for Nebraska, and it's going to be a challenge for Wisconsin to turn around that struggling offense.
Yeah, and one thing of note there with Wisconsin's offensive coordinator, or lack thereof, it's going to be more by committee, which is going to be an interesting challenge. Though, just like we talked about this last week with Dana Holgorsen, they can't reinvent the wheel. They can't, just pitch the old playbook and import a new one. It's going to probably be a lot of the same plays. It's just what are they going to call without one man overseeing it all.
Yeah, going to be interesting. Just shout out some suggestions for the plays. Pick them out of the hat, something like that. We can figure out an interesting committee approach for them to go with. But I think everybody knows about the stakes coming up in this game. Both teams 5-win teams. Whoever wins goes to a bowl game. Whoever doesn't has a mighty tough rivalry game at the end of the year coming up. And for Nebraska, it's also a big day, senior day, final home game of the year. Lots of players walking. As Matt Rhule said, he shouted out some of the 6th-year, 5th-year guys who have been with this program for a long time. But we also had a lengthy discussion with him kind of about the future of college football, the future of this Nebraska football roster, because, they got 30 seniors going. Some of them are walk-ons. In the future, they will not have as many because trimming the roster limit down to 105, that's going to be a big challenge. And Matt Rhule, he's a former walk-on. It hits very close home to him. He's not very optimistic about how that's going to look. He's very disappointed that Nebraska's going to have to trim these roster limits, and some very deserving players are going to be off the roster next season.
Yeah, and that's not just here, right? It's everywhere. Like, most of the Big Ten rosters have more than 105. Now, Nebraska at 150 is much larger than just about anybody in the country, but you look at the trickle-down effect of that, right? The transfer portal is already just flooded with talent, flooded with guys. And now, okay, there's at least 10 to 30 guys, depending on your roster, that are going to have to leave. Where are they going to go? It's going to be really messy. It's going to be a lot of tough conversations. And what hurts me is you look at guys like some of the All-Americans that have been here, right? That came here as walk-ons and carved out a really big role for themselves. There might not be a place for them in the future. Or guys on this active roster, like, my mind immediately goes to John Bullock. Like, is he given an opportunity, 4 years ago, 5 years ago, if these rules were in place? I don't think so. And you wonder what that change is going to mean for the future of your feel-good, rise through it all storylines. It sucks.
Yeah, and specifically with that guy that you mentioned, John Bullock, I know speaking to him in the past, he had opportunities like many other players who are at that level, like could have gone FCS. He had those scholarship opportunities, but it just meant more. He wanted to be a Husker. So that was what he did, came, grinded for several years, eventually earned that playing time. And also, when you look at the future, the way that these rosters are built, of course, there's still going to be high school recruits. That's not going away. Nebraska has a very healthy recruiting class coming up. But to the best of my knowledge, they have not extended any walk-on offers to in-state players. That is unfathomable for this Nebraska program. Usually, that's 10, 15 walk-on, 20 walk-ons. Lots of talented high school players in the state who are having to go elsewhere. And it's just something that Matt Rhule, he's not excited about. These are tough conversations he's going to have after the season ends. Yeah,
and to your point about recruiting, Matt said today that he doesn't want to make promises that he can't keep. And so that's why you're not seeing those. But it pains him. It really does. Like, that was about as impassioned as we've seen him since he's been here on something. Because it's, like, at the core of not just who he is, but, like, who this staff is. Like, so many of them were walk-ons. And for them to see, like, a part of them, like, go away and, like, people not being able to have a similar opportunity as them, like, it's sad.
Yeah, and we bring this up in part because this is a major part of the emotion of this week's game. And like I said, everybody understands what's on the line, but in addition to those seniors, there are lots of those guys on the roster be wearing a Nebraska uniform, going out with the team inside Memorial Stadium for the last time. So this is something that the Nebraska football team is going to be impacted with as they prepare for this game with Wisconsin. But hopefully we will hear more about their preparation for that game. Looking to get more of those details here this week on Tuesday. That'll do it for today's practice report, and we'll see you next time.